At a time of globalisation, when high streets all look the same and design is becoming so uniform, there are some strange objects that us Brits just won't let go of. Unusual designs that somehow endure. After all, we are a nation who loves the eccentric, the outsider, the unsung hero. And that's what we're here to celebrate. Welcome to British Made. In this programme, we'll be looking at an absolute British icon, used by millions every day, yet barely given a second glance. It's become a symbol of our country, synonymous with our capital, with London, and it's known throughout the world. Taxi! By today's standards, it's not the most glamorous of cars. Those curved edges, the round headlights, the chrome grille, old-fashioned rear lights, and even the classic yellow taxi sign. It all points more to Miss Marple than it does to an efficient workhorse of today. But workhorse it is, with 20,000 of them in London alone, offering 90 million lifts a year and built to drive nearly 1 million miles in its 10-year lifespan. It's got a turning circle of only 25 foot. And you don't get that in any other car.
And when one of these comes down the road towards a potential passenger, they know what it does.
Quite often when people come to London for the first time, you actually see them stare at the cab as much as they're staring at the Houses of Parliament.
Well, it's a style icon, isn't it?
It's very British.
Fantastic, I love it.
And inside, this layout is unique. No ordinary car here. There's amazing amounts of legroom and headroom, 3 seats along the back facing 2 flip-down seats. And it's actually this spacious interior that's a real hit.
I like the way that the seats face each other when you've got passengers. You can sit and chat across the car.
It's almost like continuing the pub, but in a taxi.
Now, you and I know this as a black cab, but its proper name is a hackney carriage, which has nothing to do with Hackney in East London, but is derived from the French word hackney, which means horse for hire. Now, this is a pointer to earlier modes of transport, but also a reminder that the cab's ancestors were always powered by a single horse. It all started back in the early days, before the motor car was big news.
In 1903, there were about 10,000 hackney carriages in London, and they were all horse-drawn. But from that point on, they started to go across to motorised taxis. Originally, there was had to be enough room in the back of a cab for a gentleman to sit there with his top hat on.
The cab quickly became a familiar sight on city streets. And in 1958, the forerunner of the cab we know and love today was born. Created by Austin, this was the shape that came to typify the black cab, lasting 38 years and becoming iconic. It's still out on the streets today. And for some, it's the only cab to have. Meet Derek, not your everyday cabbie. This sassy suit wearer has 23 years behind the wheel and takes owning this British classic very seriously.
This lovely long bonnet. And you've got the chrome additions, you know, the grille and the headlight covers, a sort of classic curved shape.
Meet Phil, 33 years in the trade and no fan of old classics.
To get yourself in first gear, to even think of moving off, you have to double the clutch. That means pump the clutch.
When you took the vehicle through an automatic car wash, the rolling brush used to catch under here and rip this back. And I can remember going into my garage after it happened to me and he said, "Oh, you're the third one this week."
The only air conditioning we had there was the air that came in between the cracks that we hadn't stuffed up with newspaper.
After a year or two, they tended to leak. I mean, I always used to carry a couple of shopping bags, and if the rain got too much, I used to put my feet through the shopping bags. A friend of mine was telling me a story not so long ago. He had a job from Victoria Station to Eaton Square, got out to help the guy with his luggage, and I think the guy thought he was so hard up because he had the shopping bags that he ran upstairs and fetched him a pair of his old shoes.
But in those days, a cab was a cab, it was a workhorse, and we used to could go out, and provided it had a meter and we could get the passengers in the back, we didn't worry in those days.
So it was far from perfect, but over its 38 years, it's been hugely successful and sold by the bucket load, 85,000 models to be precise. And during that time, the outside, with its 1950s styling, has hardly changed. But underneath the bonnet, it's a completely different story. There have been revolutionary automatic gearboxes from America, engines from Austin, Land Rover, Japanese car giants Nissan, and now they're all Fords. Of course, there were rival designs to the cab crown. Take the Winchester, a classic 60s innovation. Made of fiberglass, the idea was that it wouldn't rust, and even though it survived several reincarnations, the fiberglass body was less durable than steel, and only 200 were made over 9 years. Then in the 1980s, the government sponsored a bizarre plan to create a taxi version of the Range Rover. Cabbies hated it. Wheelchairs struggled to get in and out, and it was just plain ugly. The vehicle never made it into production. But in 1987, a credible rival did finally appear, the Metro Cab. Angular and distinctly 80s looking, it was a slow but steady seller. Some argued it was technically better than its classic rival, but it was undeniably boxy and did a very good impression of a hearse. Production finally ended in early 2006. So in the end, this design won out because those people who drove, repaired and lived with it loved it. For them, it wasn't broken, so it didn't need to be fixed. And it's here, at this Coventry factory where cabs have been made for 40 years, that this design lives on. 4,500 are made every year, exporting to 48 countries all over the world.
We're producing 14 or 15 vehicles a day, and that equates to one off the end of the production line every 30 minutes or so. Here, it's hand assembly. They're putting things into the jigs and fixtures by hand. They're welding things by hand. Everywhere else, it's a robot, but not here. Americans like our product so much because it is so traditionally British. And we've even produced one with Burberry cloth interior specifically for them.
Even though today's black cab is better equipped for the modern passenger, essentially it's retained its character of 40 years ago. It's that shape that's so instantly recognisable.
If it is a bit old-fashioned, that's nice.
So if you drop from outer space, you know, see a couple of them, you know, you're home.
And after all, when you need to stand out in a busy city, I'd say that's essential.
Where can you hire a £34,000 piece of equipment and an operator for £2.20? Right?
At a time when it seems that everything we love about Britain is either gone or under threat, like the Routemaster bus and the red phone box, I think the black cab has now become so iconic it will never disappear. And it doesn't matter that it's not fast, that it's not sexy, and that it distinctly has one foot in the past. This vehicle has won a place on our roads by being so purely practical, but it's also won a place in our hearts.
A rumble in the jungle next. Virginia McKenna and Bill Travers star in Born Free.